Hello everyone, welcome to Jesus Mom and Son. As you can tell, this time it's just me, and there's a reason for that. Actually, the next couple of videos will probably just be me. I was laying in bed the other night, and it just came to me and that I think it's time that I need to share some of my testimonies of how the Lord has brought me through. And He has brought me through many, many times throughout my life, through different trials and circumstances. But there's three in particular that I wanted to talk about, and I just didn't know if I could do it. It's very close and very personal to me. So I'm just going to take it a little bit at a time, and it may actually take me doing several videos and piecing them together to make one video, but hopefully it'll just be in 3 parts. But I just feel like that, you know, sometimes God allows us to go through circumstances, and when He brings us through it, then He wants us to share it with others who may be going through similar situations. So like I said, this is, you know, I've talked about it before through post, and I've talked about it, you know, to friends and family and stuff, but I just never really, like, opened up a whole lot about some of the things that I've been through. Back in, I guess the Lord called me and kept tugging at my heart back in December of 2002. And so I made the commitment to give my life to the Lord then. And I went to church every Sunday, or tried to, and I read my Bible, and I thought, well, that's it. You know, that's all that's required. And like I prayed, you know, but I didn't know nearly what I know now. And so anyways, a lot of things, like, you know, just life went on. And then in 2006, 2008, well, scratch that. It started, I guess. I'm so sorry. It's late at night, and but you know, when you feel like the need that you need to do it, then you don't want to fight against it, because it could be the Lord telling you need to. This is the time. So, anyways, back in December of 2007, my mother started getting sick, and she was just like losing her balance a little bit, or dropping things, and she would say, you know, my head's spinning, you know, I sort of feel lightheaded. And so she went to the doctor, and they told her that she had an ear infection. And so they gave her some medicine for it, and she started taking it. And probably, you know, a couple days passed by, and she was still doing the same stuff. So she went back to the doctor, and they prescribed her some Meclizine and some other type of antibiotic. And so she started taking that, and then I noticed like a few changes in her. And so I kept, you know, watching her, but she kept reassuring me that it was, you know, her ear. So then, probably the end of December or the beginning of January, I went to bed and I was asleep and I had a dream. And in my dream, I heard a man's voice as plain as day. And he said, "Your mother's gonna die." And I woke up and I was screaming to the top of my lungs. And of course, my mom heard me and she come running in there. And she's like, "What's wrong?" And I told her. And she was like, "Oh, it's just a dream. It's just a dream." And I remember that I was so terrified that I actually made her lay down beside me until I went back to sleep. Anyways, about 3 days later, my mom was acting very strange, and so I called my sister, my oldest sister, who's an RN, and I told her, I said, "Mom's acting so strange. I don't know what's going on with her," because she just wasn't acting like herself. And so my sister's like, "Look at her pupils." And so I looked at them, and one was larger than the other one. And I told her about it. And so she said, "You need to get her to the doctor now." And so we all packed up and we got in the vehicle and we took her to the hospital. And the doctor came in there and the doctor looked at her and the doctor said, "Oh, it's an ear infection." And thankfully, my oldest sister was there also. And she said, "Doc, what about her pupils?" And so he looked at her pupils and he seen that they were different. And so he ordered a scan of her head. And when he done that, they came in and told us the horrified news that she had a tumor. And so I was devastated. We all were devastated and scared and didn't know what to do. And so they sent her to UK hospital. And so we got in my vehicle and we all went down with her. And we stayed with her. My brother went with us, and we called all the kids and everyone, my dad and everyone, and we all come down there, or went up to Lexington. And so after a while, they come in and they ran tests, and they came back with the diagnosis that it was CNS lymphoma. And they said that it was inoperable. And so they told us that they would have to do radiation on her, and hopefully the radiation would get rid of the cancer. So for the next several months, we all chipped in. We all took turns staying with her and everything. And I prayed. I prayed so hard. My mom was my best friend. And me and her, we used to read the Bible together. Like every night, no matter how old I got, we read the Bible together. And we would pray together. And so we prayed. And we prayed so hard. And I was so scared. because I'd never lost nobody. You know, I'd lost aunts and uncles, and I'd lost grandparents, but that's nothing like your mom. I mean, you hurt, and you don't, you miss them, but your mom, that's your flesh and blood, that's the woman that you see be strong all these years. And I just remember being so scared. And as time went on, she started getting worse and worse. And I prayed even harder. I prayed as hard as I could. I hit my knees. I cried out to God. And I was so angry. But I wasn't angry at no one in general. I was just, no one specifically. I was just angry. I didn't understand. It was, I felt like, I just was angry. I can't even explain it now. And so we stayed by her side, and we tried to be there for her as much as we could. And as time went on, it was like everything just kept going wrong. And I started seeing her fade away, And we would listen to Christian music, and I would lay beside of her. I climbed right up in that bed beside of her, and I would pray. And I was afraid to leave her, afraid something would happen. But, I had to work too. And so we just kept each other informed. And it seemed like the more I prayed, the more that she just kept getting worse. And sometimes I would take her to church. And I would watch her, and she would be listening to the preacher so intent. And she loved the Lord. And I was angry because I didn't want to lose her. I hadn't had no babies at the time. I hadn't, I felt like, I needed her. And I remember taking her to the doctor one day, and she was laying back in the seat, and she was just looking over at the leaves and at it was spring. Everything was starting to bloom, and she's like, that's just so pretty. She just admired the small things. She just enjoyed it too. She enjoyed the colors, the beauty that's around us. And sometimes I think that we forget to do that. We get so caught up in our own lives that we forget to look at the small things. Then as time went on, we had to stay at the Hope Lodge for her radiation and everything. And so all of the family took different turns staying with her. And I remember my oldest sister Thelma came up to stay with her, and it was late at night, and I was gonna have to go back because I had to work the next morning, and so me and her, we said our prayer. I always said a prayer with her, and you know, there was some stuff that she would get confused on, or sometimes she would just look at you, but what was amazing to me was that she always remembered the Lord's Prayer. She could say it word for word. And we said her prayer, and she laid down on the bed and was getting ready to go to sleep. And so I was gathering my stuff, and my mom was weak. Like her right side was very weak, and I remember she rose up out of that bed like strength, like you wouldn't believe. I mean, just this wonderful strength. And she pulled back the covers, and she looked over, and I looked at her, and I said, "Mom, what are you doing?" And she said, "I want to go play with Arnold." And I said, "Who's Arnold?" And she said, "The angel." And you talk about chills. That sent a lot of chills on me. But it made me feel so good. But I found myself, whenever I was out, somebody would say something or do something, and I would just snap at them. I was just so angry. And it was like anyone was just, it was like, I was like, give me a reason. Because I didn't know how to deal with all the emotions that I was feeling. And then they said she ended up getting pneumonia. And I was so frustrated with myself because I was like, you know, did we do something wrong? Did I do something wrong? Did I not notice something? And so we brought her back home, and she started running a fever. And so, if I'm not mistaken, I think me and my oldest sister took her back to the hospital. And they done a scan, and they said the cancer's gone. And so for a split second, we were extremely happy. But then they come back and they said, well, she's got pneumonia, and it's not looking good. And so they admitted her into the hospital. And I stayed there. I think we both stayed there with her. And at that point, they told us that it might not be long. And I was so angry. And I remember I stayed there with her. And I hadn't ate in a long time. And I was singing to her and praying praying for, and I was begging God, please heal my mom. And I remember that hadn't eaten in a while, and they was trying to get me to go eat, and they said, you just run down the road. And I was laying beside of her, and I started to move, and she grabbed my arm, and she wrapped it around her, and I started crying. And I waited a little while, and then I left for just a second, and I come back, and she was asleep, and they had given her medicine to help her rest. And it wasn't a week or two after that she passed away. And it was horrible. I mean, I know where she went to. I mean, my mom loved the Lord with all her heart. And I know where she went. I know she's in a much better place. But I was so hurt because, not for anyone else, but for myself. Because I was selfish. I needed her. And she was supposed to be there for me. And anyways, I remember I was so tired. And I come back home, and my sisters, God love their heart, they got everything ready. And I just remember I slept for the longest time. And everything was like in slow motion. And anyways, I got up and went to the funeral. And I remember coming back and praying. And I was so angry. I was angry. I was like, why, God? Why'd you take her away from me? I hadn't had a grandbaby yet for her to see. But I kept going to church with my dad, and I kept trying to be strong. But I remember I sit in them pews, and I would hear that preacher talk and preach. And it was like I was there, but I was in a daze. I don't know. And I would hear people come in and give praise reports about how they were healed. And I felt myself getting angry. even more angry. Because I was like, why was this person healed? And I prayed and I pleaded with you for my mom, and you didn't heal her. And I was so angry. I just can't stress that enough. And it seemed like nobody understood me. And I knew that my sisters and my brothers were going through things themselves, and I knew they was trying to, deal with losing mom. And so we hardly ever mentioned it to each other because I may be having a good day, but my sister would maybe be having a bad day. Or she may be having a good day and I may be having a bad day. And I just kept it all in. Until one day, I couldn't. And so I called the preacher. And I won't say who it was, but I called a preacher. And I told him exactly how I felt. That I was angry. And that I was hurting. And that I didn't understand why my prayers wasn't answered. I didn't understand why my mom had to be taken away from me. And thankfully, God placed that preacher in my life at that moment, because he sat down and he talked to me, and he stayed on the phone with me for probably over an hour, talking to me. And he told me, he said, we don't always understand and we don't know why we gotta go through things. But God's got a reason for everything. And he said maybe it was, there could be, maybe he knew that there was something down the road that would cause her to maybe turn away from him. Or maybe it was something that would hurt her. Hurt her emotionally, that she would have to go through. And and recently, actually, we were reading through the Bible, and I actually read in Isaiah where it talks about how sometimes the good will be removed to keep them from the wicked, or from wicked things happening. But he said, and he talked to me, and he prayed with me. And it gave me some peace. And I finally let go of all that anger and that bitterness, because I knew that the Lord was with me. And I knew that he was giving me this. That was his way of comforting me. But something my mom told me one time, when she was sick, me and her were sitting there talking one day. And she looked at me and she said, me and you are going to have a lot of sorrow. And I didn't know what she was talking about. And I thought maybe that she was talking about, you know, maybe her passing and me being sorrowful and her, you know, because she had to leave her kids behind, or she was worried about how her, not, I mean, I know that she knew that she's going to a better place, but maybe that she was afraid or, you know, just worried about us kids and how we would be without her. That's how I took it. But now that I've went through some stuff, I finally understand what she meant. And I think that God allowed her to see what I was going to go through. I don't know. But so God started talking to me through His Word and through a preacher to help me. And He started pulling me in through that time frame. And I'm going to stop right there tonight. And I'll head on from there.